authors, I'm Joanne Morrell, children's and young adult fiction writer and author of short non-fiction for authors. Thanks for joining me for the Hybrid Author podcast, sharing interviews from industry professionals to help you forge a career as a hybrid author, both independently and traditionally publishing your books. You can get the show notes for each episode and sign up for your free author pass over at the Hybrid Author website to discover your writing process, get tips on how to publish productively, and get comfortable promoting your books at www.hybridauthor.com.au. Let's crack on with the episode.
Hello, authors! I hope you're all keeping well in whatever part of the world you reside and listen to the podcast in. Welcome to June! And we kick off our mid-year month with today's interview from best-selling romantic suspense and alpine-crime author Lee Christine. And Lee chats about author fears, drawing on life experiences, writing what you know, researching firsthand, how her writing has changed from when she began to now, her books, tips for authors yet to turn their lifelong dreams of authorship into reality, and much more. So in my author adventure this week, inspiration struck for a quirky, fun little picture book. So I began writing this whilst travelling in the car, and I hope to finish it and put it up for a critique via the Squibby Australia West online critique group. So for those of you who don't know, I'm part of Squibby, which is the Society of Children's Book Writers and Illustrators. Squibby West because residing in Perth for the last 7 years now. I volunteer on the team as newsletter editor and social media coordinator. As I write children's and YA, this is the group I'm part of. If you write for that genre, you want to join as well. It's a worldwide organisation, so check out your local chapter. I've met some great people, learned a lot about the industry and the craft, and made some seriously fun memories since becoming a part of this group. I started out writing YA, which is young adult fiction, my very first manuscript, and I've slowly gone down age groups to middle grade, junior fiction, and now picture books. I have writing ideas across the board for all of these genres, and I think it's because I read so widely to my kids. When I was writing my first YA manuscript, my kids were just born. Then subsequently I was reading picture books to them for years, even to now, 2 a night. So it's no wonder I have had something to write about in this area. So I'm definitely a hybrid author by the way I publish, but I'm also a hybrid author with the genres I write. I'm also a person who gets bored quite easily, so having a variety of options for me is definitely what works. In caravan plans, turns out the Bungle Bungles was open. It was the caravan park that was in there that wasn't, so we free camped in a car park. That's what it looked like. It comes with sort of toilets and things like that, but it's classified as a free camp. You're allowed to camp there for 24 hours or 48 hours. No power or anything like that, but it was pretty much up the road from the national park, which holds the Bungle Bungles, and so we travelled in there for the 2 days, and the road, it was about an hour and a half in to the visitor centre, and the road was uncorrugated is what you call it, so it was like bumpy, rattly for like the hour and a half to get to the visitor centre. Great visitor centre there, amazing scenery of the rocks. The Bungle Bungles is you'd have to look at my socials. I'll hopefully put a picture up. It's just the Australian landscape. It's just amazing how it changes. It's just incredible. It's these big kind of rocks, formations that some are like cones. They're just huge, and obviously you can see where the water level has risen and fallen. They're almost like canyons, actually. So we did quite a few treks and hikes through there. Seen a lot of dead cane toads, which was quite creepy, and spiders, but it was amazing. It's pretty hot where we are at the moment. As I said, I'm recording these intros and outros in the car because it's actually quite a good sound box, but I'm absolutely sweating. It's in the 30s, but the temperature drops quite quickly overnight and in the mornings. I mean, I slept with trackies on last night. So yeah, 2 days at the Bungle Bungles, and then we arrived at Kununurra, and yes, that is crocodile country, which I am in crocodile country. So I've seen these big signs that is like, beware, croc beware, with this evil looking crocodile in there. So obviously we're quite terrified. But when we arrived at Kununurra, we went to the RAC Lake Kununurra for a night, and it was really just to refuel, stock up before coming to our next stop. But I really feel like we missed out there because it's such a stunning place. There's freshwater crocodiles crocodiles in the lake that we were next to. And I just sort of asked the lady when we got there, is the crocodiles here? And she was like, yeah, just trying to show me where we're going. I was like, oh, did they come into the camp? And she's like, no. And just sort of, seems like she was getting a bit annoyed. She just didn't seem to think that was an issue. And but she did say, look, if you want to see one, and she circled a part of the lake, she said there's one that comes up, George. And so we did have a look, and it was just sort of bobbing around the water. So out of the two, the freshwater ones aren't really known to bother to bite humans or eat them or something, but it's the salties that you want to look out for. Luckily they were on the other side of the lake or something, but we treat them all the same. They can kill. So we did get a look at George. It's quite fascinating actually, and it adds all to the adventure. So anywhere we are now, I'm like, looking for a crocodile. I almost want to see one, but it's so the fear factor has gone down a little, which is probably not a good thing. But so Kununurra, it's just beauty. It really is great, and all the locals are friendly. Big Aboriginal communities up there, all smiling, all nice, and we've met some really cool people. We're currently in El Questro, so if you reside in Australia, this is a bucket list place for sure. It is like a ranch in the middle of nowhere, and you've got to sort of travel through some of the I'm not going to say waterways, but sort of water that we've had to travel through to get to the other side. I've been a bit like holding onto my car door because worried about water coming in. But this place is incredible. There's helicopters, there's air flights, which are very pricey. They're like $550 per person, which we will not be going on. But they have stables. I've already done an hour trek through the hills and through water as well, which was a bit crazy with my eldest daughter, and that was quite stunning. Learning all about the boab trees and the different plants. And it's interesting for me because I didn't grow up here. So I really feel like I want to know more about the Australian landscape. And, there's a bush, a rosalia, I don't know if I'm saying that right. And it's a bush you can just sort of eat from it, and then you can make jam. And just a really great place. We did a gorge walk the other day. We did Emma Gorge. Again, there's a resort next to it. So it's sort of like you're out in the country, but it's fancy. So that suits us, that there's a bar and there's, things like that. And we've met another really lovely family that our kids have bonded, and we went off to do a gorge together. And when we got to the top, there's these falls. Now the water, I swam in it, the water was like ice, but this waterfall coming off these cliffs, and it's just incredible, absolutely incredible. So if you are looking to go away, have a unique trip, El Questro so far is just been amazing. Our next stop, I think, is going to even top that, but we'll see how that goes. So this week I haven't done too much. As I said, I've been had the inspiration for the picture book, so I've been writing that. But we've treated this week as even homeschool. This is physical education, because you need to get up early and go out and do these things rather than do the homeschool, go out at peak sun midday, and then the kids are very tired in the afternoon. So they're learning the land and whatnot. Same with writing. Just done what I can do. Right now we're living in the experience in the moment, and that's good enough for me. So if you love the podcast or any of the episodes has helped you further in your author career, you can now pay it forward by buying me a coffee over at buymeacoffee.com/thehybridauthor. Your support means the world. Let's all support each other.
Leigh Christine is the best-selling Australian author of 9 books in the romantic, suspense and alpine-crime genres. She proves at 60 it's never too late to turn lifelong dreams into reality. Welcome to the Hybrid Author Podcast, Leigh.
Oh, hi. Thank you. How are you going?
I'm well, thank you. Thanks for asking, and thanks for coming on. We're absolutely thrilled to have you. So we'll just dive right in. Can you tell us, how did you come to be an author and write in the romantic, suspense and alpine crime genres?
Well, I always dabbled, Joanne, or I always played around with writing. So the instinct was always there. As a teenager, I wrote songs for a band that I was in. I attempted articles in my 20s and 30s. I wrote a YA novel in my 40s. I got the YA out of my system fairly early and decided I didn't want to write another one in that genre. So I had to have a serious think about what type of story I could write, and could I do it well enough to get published? I thought about the stories I like to read and then began writing those and entering contests and getting feedback from editors who were marking those competitions. So I had my first romantic suspense novel published in 2012. I wrote 6 romantic suspense novels, and one of those was self-published as part of a series with a group of other authors. And the last 3 are set in the New South Wales Snowy Mountains simply because I love that location.
Is that where you join us today, from the snowy alpine mountains of New South Wales?
No, I'm in Newcastle today.
Oh, okay. That's amazing. Well, it sounds like, you've had quite a lead up to, your authorship career, and you are starting a bit later than some authors I know, but, 53, you decided to bite the bullet and become serious about being full-time. So obviously all these other bits of writing and stuff that you have performed have kind of lead you up to this. So can you take us back to then when you thought, I really want to do this as a career or full time? What did that look like at that age? And did you have any doubts or author fears that you thought, can I do this? What am I doing?
I think I was 53 when I actually got published. So I think I was about 48 when I had that sort of epiphany that I wanted to do something, have a life-changing career. It was a time when things were changing in my life. So my children were grown. I have a boy and a girl, and they're 36 and 33 now. But they were grown. They were into getting, more and more independent all the time, had jobs, had their license, and that were on their way. And it was sort of coincided at the same time that my job as a corporate trainer was winding down. So I was a trainer in computer software. So I taught everything from the days of DOS through to WordPerfect, the Microsoft Suite, Amy Pro, Lotus 123, probably programs you're probably too young to even remember. But I rode a wave of computer training throughout the 90s, teaching in a couple of corporate places here in Newcastle, also at TAFE, and I did have my own little computer training business for a while as well. But what happened was people were very anxious about learning computing at that time, and so there was a great need for it. But also small children were being introduced to computers at school, and then parents had to, teach. They were coming into the homes, as well as they had to cope with trying to carry out their work on computers. So there was a lot of anxiety out there about that. But then that decreased, and as that next generation came along, they just grew up with computers, just a part of their life. As I said, that was sort of winding down, and at the same time, my children were leaving home. So I was like, okay, I've been doing this for a long time and I'd like to give this writing a serious crack. And now the kids were grown up, I thought that was my opportunity. I had time. As far as fears and doubts, we all had them, but I didn't let them hold me back. I doubted I'd get published. Then when I was published, I started worrying about whether my books would sell. So I'm sure there's a lot of authors out there that can relate to that. If you're going to be a writer or any creative for that matter, you are putting your work out to be criticised, and you have to expect that, and you can't please everybody. We all have our favourites, and a criticism of your book or your art or your music isn't a criticism of you as a person. I mean, we all know movie stars who have made great actors who have made terrible movies. So I just thought to myself, well, if you're going to do it, you're going to have to put your work out there and try to take any criticism and feedback on board and learn from it. So that's how that all came about.
Yeah, that's amazing. I love advice to our listeners there as well, to embrace everything this industry has to offer, because it can be really hard and scary and all the rest. But I love that the conversations that we have as writers, and it seems like everybody has these doubts and they're feeling them, but exactly what you said there, you can't let that hold you back, else you're never gonna realize your lifelong dreams and turn them into reality. So
yeah, that's right. And I mean, some people's dream, isn't it, to like jump out of the plane at 90 or to travel endlessly or whatever. It doesn't really matter what your dream is, but I think and sometimes women, when their children are older and it's their time, because we devote our time to everyone else, well, in my generation, we devoted a lot of our time to other people and put ourselves last. I think the, younger generations are probably hopefully doing things a bit differently, but still that practicality of, life, whatever your life is, and life admin, it gets in the way. And you've got to try to make that time to write and just go for it.
Absolutely. And definitely it is something I guess women of our generation today are doing. I'm much the same before coming away on this caravan trip, but, working, kids, husband, and trying to fit in everything else. It's I'd say women of today are probably just doing too much and trying to get burned out.
Quite often elderly parents too, because that tends to hit at the same time, the elderly parents and parents getting older while you still have teenage children and all of that. So it is hard with all these things to find time to write, because you do need a certain amount of time to just sit there and those things do stifle the creative process too, I think.
Yeah, it's amazing. I've talked to a lot of different people and where they fit the time in to write and in between everything, and it's crazy. And I hear kids are leaving home later these days than I left at 17, and I was kind of thinking the same, but I don't think kids leave now till like late 20s.
I don't think they can afford to.
No, that's right. Yes, that's it. Well, as we've touched upon, today's topic is it's never too late to turn your lifelong dreams into reality. So you mentioned before, you sort of wrote some songs in a band, and there was other aspects that made up your life. Can you tell us about the various aspects this statement applies to your life and how these experiences have shaped your writing? So past professions or past, like you said, the songwriting stuff, how's that all helped with this authorship career now?
It has all helped. My first 3 books that I wrote for my former publisher was a legal trilogy. And that came about because I worked in a legal office for probably about 7 years, both in Sydney and Newcastle. I married a lawyer. And I've been married to him for 40 years. So I've been surrounded by the law, and he had his own practice for about 35 years. So, I would go in if we were short-staffed, had people leave, through illness and things like that. I went in when we lost our office manager because she'd had a cancer diagnosis, unfortunately, and left in a hurry. And so I had to sort of step in and do like some practice management things as well. So my first 3 books that I wrote back in 2012 and 13, 14, they were set in a fictional legal office in Sydney. So, you do draw on those experiences. I did travel probably about 14 years ago now through Italy and up the Amalfi Coast. And so my 4th book, A Dangerous Arrangement, is set on the Amalfi Coast. Now, I would never have been able to write that book had I not had that experience. I mean, you can do a certain amount through Google, and you can get onto YouTube and see people that have travelled through, up the Amalfi Coast and that, and it's not impossible. But I do think just, you can't beat that, the research of actually doing it yourself, if possible.
There's things you notice, isn't there? Like I went to the Pinnacles in Australia, and I've been there before, but when we visited, I mean, I would have had flies buzzing around the trees, but it's dragonflies. And that's quite a difference, and there's things that you would pick up, sights and smells and stuff that's not written on the internet.
Absolutely.
So no, I agree there.
Yeah, and then my last trilogy, the Snowy Mountains one, which is Charlotte Pass, Crackenback and Dead Horse Gap for another publisher, my current publisher. I've been a skier for a long time, going down to the ski fields in winter and having a ski for decades. And my daughter became a ski instructor. She loved it so much that she went and got her level 1. And while she was at uni, I think she did, 7 seasons here in Australia and then in Canada and the US. And then she'd come back and start uni again. She did it in the holidays. So I've always been around that. But not only just going to the Snowy Mountains in winter, like I also love it down there in summer. hiking, there's blues festivals to go to. It's all the snow gums and things. It's so unique. It is such a unique environment. And I felt that it was underutilised in Australian fiction, that area. We tended to lots of stories written about, dry, small, dusty drought, towns in drought, outback stories. And I just thought, well, hang on, we've got these beautiful snowy mountains down there, and there's not that many stories that have been written down there. So again, I think all of those life experiences, you don't write exactly, in your characterization, okay, I'm going to write that person. It's someone I know. No, you just draw aspects of their, maybe a quirky personality or something interesting that they've done or something, and it's a mashup of, one of your characters might be a mashup of about 7 different people that but you do draw on all those life experiences. And I think the older you get, the more life experiences you've had. Yeah. And I think leaving it later just gives you more of that to draw on. Well, it did for me, because I don't think if I had started writing in my 20s, I don't think I would have lived enough life to have written much at all.
It would probably look quite different, yes. Yeah, no, that's amazing. So did you read, because you write a lot from experience and things like that, and it all sounds amazing, but do you read in the genres as well that you write? Were you quite a big crime and romantic suspense reader to begin with?
Yeah, I was. And right from an early age, like many girls of my generation, I read Nancy Drew stories, I read The Famous Five, I read Trixie Belden stories, and all of those sorts of, books that we had in that generation. I absolutely loved it. And then when I went to high school, I remember in year 7 at high school, I found a whole row of Mills and Boon books down the bottom, right on the bottom shelf. So looking back, I think, why were they in the high school library? I don't really know. I don't know whether they'd be in school libraries these days, but they were back then. And I picked up one, and it was by Lucy Walker, and she had written a whole series about English girls coming out to the Australian outback. And, and here they were with their peaches and cream, beautiful English complexion in the outback, the heat and the dust and all of that. Well, I just got hooked. I just read the whole lot of them. And so I think that was my introduction into the romance genre. And then later on in high school, I started reading Agatha Christie and all that as I sort of, got older. But yes, look, there's been a lot of books that I, sort of widely read. But now, because I write in that genre, I read Tana French, the Irish author that the BBC series, The Dublin Murders, was based on. Her stories, Into the Woods and The Likeness. I just think she's fabulous. But I do read Michael Connolly, I read Lee Child, I read David Baldacci. But I also read, women's fiction, some women's fiction books as well. So, it's whatever I think I feel like reading, at that time. I have always read, and I think that's what just gave me the love of writing, thinking, well, I've got stories in my head, so I think I can write one. I'll have a go anyway.
Yeah, good on you, and thank goodness you did. Well, like you were saying, if you had started back then, your writing might look quite different. But you did say, the first 10 years of your writing was like an apprenticeship. How has your writing changed, in the past decade from kind of when you started to now? Is it?
Well, I think the biggest change is just the word count. For a start, when I started, the first six romantic suspense novels, the word count I think was somewhere between 65,000 and 72,000. A Dangerous Arrangement was 72,000. The trilogies were around about 65, 68,000. And I felt at that time that was sort of the longest story that I could write. Yeah, I don't know whether they're not quite as layered as my stories now, and so I didn't feel at that stage that I could write an 80 to 90,000 word or 100,000 word novel. So, but as I've gone on, the stories have become longer. So the 3 Set in the Snow, I think the first one was about 94,000, and the next 2 are around the 80,000 mark. So that's one way they've changed, is that, and I think that's just because I think it's been a natural evolution for me. When I was writing romantic suspense, there was a lot more romance in the story, but I always had a mystery or a crime. I never have written a straight romance novel because I don't think I could. I've always wanted them solving something, solving a puzzle, solving a crime, lots of suspense. And because that's what I like reading. So, that's what I've written. But I think it's been a natural evolution for me that as I've gone on, the plots have become more intricate. And so as the plots have become more intricate, the romance has taken a back seat. But I still like to have romantic elements in there because I think that if the characters care about each other, then the stakes are a lot higher. And so I think that goes well with, I think the romantic elements goes well with the crime and suspense because you keep the tension going with the crime and suspense, but then you've also got the romantic tension as well in those sort of quieter moments. So I think it helps the pacing of the book, and I like the way that they go together. But my novels, the last three, and the one that I'm currently writing, you could describe it as a mashup of genres, really, because they're all police procedurals. My main characters in Charlotte Park, the Snowy Mountains series, and this current one, the main protagonist is a detective, and they're the common characters over the series. So it's a police procedural, it's a mystery, a crime, and it's romance. So it's a bit of a mashup, a hybrid.
Yeah, that's it. It is a hybrid, which I love. Yeah, it sounds like it's got a bit for everybody, and I do agree what you're saying. With the crimes and stuff, there's that, but the hook that they care for each other deeper, and something may happen to that person. I think that's great. That really adds sparkle or something extra for sure. No, that's perfect.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah, no, that's great. Well, tell us as well. Like you said, you self-published a book with did you say with a group of people?
I self-published one novel, and it's called Shadows of the Heart. It's available on Amazon. It's still ticking over, and people still seem to enjoy it. And I think the reason it's ticking over is because we did it as part of our writing group. There were 13 of it, and I think half were published and half hadn't been published. Design of fiction, writing this story, and we'll all write a story set in this town. And so it was called the Bindara Creek series because the town was called Bindara Creek. So there were 13 novels all set in this one town, and we self-published them all.
Amazing.
So, and people loved that series. And then we wrote, I think we did a Bindara Creek short and sweet. So we did like an anthology of sort of short stories set back in that town so that the readers could catch up with what was happening to their characters. And they've gone on to do another two series that I haven't been involved in because I've been writing my other books. But I think they've got a mystery, Bindara Creek, like a crime thing. There's not, the whole 13 original members aren't in it now. I think it might be down to about 7 or 8. But it's a well-loved series, this Bindara Creek series, but that was an experience too for me, self-publishing a novel. And I think because my Snowy series is 3 books and an Unwin is a trilogy, so they've fulfilled my contract there, but they've been really popular and there's people would still like to have more of them. So I'm thinking that's probably I'll probably write some and self-publish a couple more in that Snowy Mountain series down the track a bit after I've done this one.
Yeah, that's great. And also, how did you do it together then? Was it like a co-writing experience, or you wrote one book each in that series? Or
we wrote one book each. So there's 13 novels.
Yeah.
And I know it's a lot. And we had a database set up, and we had an Excel spreadsheet, and we had to find out where the characters were. One instance where I wanted to use one of the other author's characters, and I had her as a real cougar. She came in and like an older woman, and she sort of had the leopard print, and she had the makeup, teased blonde hair. And this other author said, no, she's nothing like that. She's a sweet old lady.
Oh no.
So all of that, but we had to check, make sure everything was correct, and we didn't have one character sort of in the pub at one time and but they were also someone in someone else's book, somewhere else. So it took a lot of, it was a lot of time doing it, but it was also fun.
Yeah. And did you each self-publish the book, or was there one person who had that skill? Or
No, we each self-published our own, so we had to sort of learn about that as well. And with the anthology, they were just short stories and things. But yeah, no, we each had to do our own book.
Fantastic. No, that's great. Well, yeah, so you are a hybrid author, which is amazing. What advice would you give to other either aspiring writers or just people in general that might have a story like yours? They've maybe been a big reader over the past or thought they've got a story in them. They haven't put themselves out there. They might be a bit scared. They might be later on in life as well and thinking, oh, it's too late for me. What would your advice be to them?
Yeah, look, I would say it's never too late. And I would look out for, I would Google search, I should say, for an online writing course. There's a multitude of them. There's also, if you're in Australia, there's the Australian Writers Centre. They do in-person courses and online. I would say join an organisation. There's lots of writing organisations. For me, because I was writing romantic suspense, I joined the Romance Writers of Australia. They have a vibrant online presence. They also run courses, which I did a few of those. They also have a conference, and they had Julia Quinn out. I think that was the Romance Readers, but they had Julia Quinn out, who was the author for Bridgerton. And she's had
oh, wow. Yeah. That's amazing.
And they had her out here in Australia, so they get fantastic guest speakers out here. And I would say enter competitions. That's what I did. I entered competitions as an unpublished author and won a couple of competitions overseas. I got a second in Australia because a lot of those competitions it's the editors that actually give you feedback on them. So that's, and if you can get feedback from an editor and take it on board, well, that's a really good thing. So I joined that, and I joined a book club, find a writing group, find a critique partner, enter competitions, try to get feedback from an editor and just take it on board. Everyone has their favourite whatever, and people have their favourite authors and their favourite books that they like to read. You're never going to please everybody. So that would be my advice.
No, that's amazing advice there. Yeah, and what can we expect from you in the future? Are you still going to be publishing in this genres, or have you had an idea for something completely different?
I'm actually writing just a standalone at the moment. It's set in my hometown of Newcastle. So again, it's a police procedural, but this time it's not the Sydney Homicide Squad, as it is in my series. It's the local detective here at Newcastle, and it's the crime set in our beautiful Glenrock State Conservation Area, which is a bushy area on the coast. So I'm working on that at the moment. And I think after that, I'll just have to see. To see where it takes. I might write another Snowy Mountains one and self-publish it.
Amazing, yeah. Because world is your oyster.
Yeah. I know there's readers out there who want more of those books, so that's a good way of getting them to them.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, where can our listeners find all these fabulous books and learn about yourself in stores and online?
Yeah, I have a website, so www.leechristine.com.au. I'm on Facebook. There's Lee Christine on Instagram as well. So you can find me at any of those sites.
Oh, that's amazing. Thank you so much for your time and expertise, Lee. It's been fantastic.
Oh, thank you so much, Joanne. It's been a real pleasure talking to you.
So there you have it, folks, the truly inspirational and lovely Lee Christine. And if you haven't already checked out Lee's books, go ahead, because they're full of suspense, romance and action and crime and alpine. And she's just, as you've heard, got a bit for everyone. Next time on the Hybrid Author Podcast, it's June. So it's our mid-year mashup of the rest of the guests that we have had on the podcast since the start of this year. I wish you well in your author adventure this next week. That's it from me. It's bye for now.
That's the end for now, authors. I hope you're further forward in your author adventure after listening, and I hope you'll listen next time. Remember to head on over to the Hybrid Author website at www.hybridauthor.com.au to get your free author pass. It's bye for now.